Hello, hello, beautiful friends. My name is Jessie James, and I am the host of the Popstrology podcast. And this week, very fun, we're doing the astrology of Hayley Williams. I thought that this was topical because she just dropped like 14, not an album, but 14 singles. And they have a lot to do with like racism, Christian nationalism, like bad things happening in our government right now, but also critiques of the music industry, talking about the drug that she's taken for so long that has let her sleep and dream because of all the pressures of being a music artist. I love Hayley Williams. I have been a Paramore obsessed person since I was in middle school because I was a teenager in the 2000s, and I think that just sort of comes with the territory. Specifically, I was a closeted gay, autistic, but didn't know it, incredibly emotional, yearning as a competitive sport teen in the 2000s. So that was just sort of like my thing, you know. Their first album, All We Know Is Falling, Emergency, Conspiracy, My Heart, Here We Go Again. That video of Hayley Williams singing Here We Go Again acoustic on that bus when she's like 14 or 15 years old. Crazy. Every song on the album means the whole entire world to me. I still play it, the album in full, at least like 4 times a week for my mental health. So I am very excited to talk about Hayley Williams today. Her astrology is really interesting. And at her heart, she is just a wounded emo kid who loves music just like the rest of us. Honestly, she's like the blueprint, at least of the 2000s. But before we get started, what has been going on this week? I am recording this episode earlier than usual. Today is Wednesday, August 6th, because I am going to Palm Springs tomorrow with a bunch of friends and people I don't know for a little joint, my best friend's birthday, and then my going away weekend party celebration thing. There is going to be a drag night, like a colorful wig / drag theme night. And there will also be a lip sync competition on this night. And my best friend and I have made a mix that includes songs such as Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus, Party for You by Charlie XCX, Look What You Made Me Do by Taylor Swift, and more, including vocal spoken interludes from Chapel Roan. It is going to be so slay. I'm going to leave everything I have on that dance floor. No room for self-doubt here. I am moving. I am leaving Los Angeles. I may never see these people again if I don't want to. I mean, they're my friends, so I actually really, really obviously hope that I see them again. But if I didn't want to, I could. So if I make a huge fool of myself, it doesn't matter because I'm leaving it all on the dance floor. This is going to be the performance of a lifetime. But it's going to be very hot in Palm Springs, obviously, which isn't that big of a difference because it's really freaking hot in LA right now. And I'm just, you know me, like I am so excited to go back home to the rain. All I want for my birthday is a thunderstorm. And like be experiencing a Virginia fall and a Virginia winter, just like I did in the old days, and get to see crunchy leaves and step on a particularly crunchy leaf. I was a member of that Facebook group in high school, and just like have seasons, and all the billion other reasons that I'm really excited to live in Virginia again. But it's coming up. I bought my flight. My best friend is coming with me to help me move the cats. I'll be home as of September 1st, and it will be glorious. So I am very, very, very freaking excited. Other things that have been going on, I watched Too Much, the new Lena Dunham show on Netflix, and I love Meg Stalter so much. She's so funny. Like, she's everything to me. People really don't understand her. Like in the Gen Pop, like the reactions that she gets when she goes on Colbert and stuff, where people are like not really laughing, I'm like, this is art. You don't understand. This is cinema. And they just don't get her, but they'll probably get her in a few years, which is like, okay, classic, always on the forefront. But I will say, I enjoyed the show. I did not like the ending. I think that all of the women involved should have ended up single. I don't think that it's a good lesson to like have been emotionally abused by someone. Even if she wasn't perfect herself, like I just don't think that going back to the guy, and her sister played by Lena Dunham, going back to her guy who was like, my idea of happiness is being trapped with you. Like, I don't find that romantic at all. Like, I would be like, get the fuck out of here. Also, you're gay. But it's Lena Dunham. So what can you do? What can you do? But I actually have never watched Girls, and enjoying this show cemented for me that I would enjoy Girls. So I am going to be watching Girls, and, you know, using the Girls Rewatch podcast so that I don't feel like I'm going it alone, which is exciting. I'm really glad that we have all of these resources these days. And honestly, despite all of the horrors, I am really glad that I live in this time period, this exact time period, because I would rather be single, child-free, in my 30s, gay, openly gay, and get to just live my life amongst the horrors and like dealing with the horrors, than have been born 20, 30 years earlier and have to have been closeted gay woman in marriage with evil man who hate me and I hate him, and have babies that I did not want just because that's my job as a woman and I need to be with a man to be able to open a bank account and have a credit card and be financially dependent on a man. Well, once horrible, you know, and they had the horrors of their own. Like, the horrors are not unique to this time period. We have had quite a lot of horrors and a different kind, but I would have had to live with the horrors either way, and I would have to deal with all of that terrible stuff. So I am very glad to be a hot, single 31 lesbian woman in year 2025. Anyway, let's talk about Hayley Williams. Hayley Nicole Williams was born in Meridian, Mississippi on December 27th, 1988. She has two younger half-sisters, and I listened to an interview that she did. Her Wikipedia page is her parents divorced and she moved to Franklin, Tennessee when she was 13. But the story is actually much deeper than that. Her mom was married to her stepfather, and they were in an abusive relationship. So as soon as her mom had the ability to leave, to flee and run away, she did. So Hayley and her mom moved to Franklin, Tennessee when Hayley was 13 years old. And she has a lot of trauma from watching her mom be in an abusive relationship with her stepdad from growing up. She's talked a lot in the past 4 years about her generational trauma and PTSD from this time. Once she moved to Franklin, Tennessee, she met Josh and Zach Faro at a weekly supplemental program for homeschooled kids, and they would go on to be founding members of the band Paramore with her. And she also met Taylor York, who was not an official member of the band Paramore until quite a bit later, but he did help Hayley write and produce songs, etc., and they are dating as of 2022. Of these people, she says that they were just the first people that she had ever met who were as passionate about music as she was, and so she was naturally drawn to them. Shortly after she moved, she also started taking voice lessons, and she tried out for a local funk cover band called The Factory, which is where she met their future bandmate Jeremy Davis, who has quite a storied history within Paramore. In 2003, when she was 14 years old, she was discovered by managers Dave Stoynabrink, I don't know, and Richard Williams, who signed her to a 2-year deal with Atlantic Records. And at first they wanted her to do a solo career, but she was like, no, I'm in a band. She said, I don't want to be marketed as some straight to top 40 pop princess. I want to show you what we can do with our band and writing and recording our own rock songs. And so that's how Paramore came to be. Paramore's music was supposed to come out under the Atlantic label, but they decided that it seemed too mainstream for the type of music that they were marketing. And so Atlantic released it under a smaller, more niche, cool label called Fueled by Ramen. Paramore's first album, All We Know Is Falling, released in 2005 when Hayley Williams was only 16 years old. The first song off of the album was Conspiracy, and Hayley says that she didn't know that they needed to write a song the first day they went in. And so Conspiracy was based on a poem that she had written that she just brought out, and they turned it into a song, which I'm amazed by because Conspiracy is such an amazing song. I'm oh, I'm so happy to know one of my favorite songs of all time's origin story. And the album, All We Know Is Falling, and the song, All We Know, are based on Jeremy Davis's first departure from Paramore. He left the band in 2005. And the cover of All We Know Is Falling is an empty couch with a shadow walking away. And Hayley says that it represented Jeremy's departure from the band. and that the whole album concept is like their grief over their original founding band member leaving. Before they started working on Paramore's next album, Riot, they kicked Jeremy Davis out of the band, citing differences. It has come out, that he has been liking racist memes and posting xenophobic things on Facebook. These days, he follows like questionable January 6th people on Instagram. Who knows? But there was also something about him like not really doing his part, falling asleep during rehearsals and songwriting sessions, etc. But then they reached an agreement and they reinstated him, and they added Taylor York as a guitarist. And Taylor had been in a band with Josh and Zach Farro before they left to found Paramore. In 2007, they released their second album, Riot, which is really a hit. It includes songs like Misery Business, Crush, 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 and That's What You Get. And around the same time, Hayley started dating the lead singer of New Found Glory, Chad Gilbert, even though he was married to Sherry Dupree, the lead singer of the band Isley. And Hayley refers to this as the first big mistake that she ever made in her life. And astrologically, which is very interesting, September 19th, 2007, so around this time, was the start of a new level 1 zodiacal releasing period for her from the lot of Eros. So to do with her love life, it's like this is a big new chapter for you, the time when she started dating a man who was married. In 2008, Paramore was nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys, and at a Grammys after party, Hayley was approached by Andrea Swift, Taylor Swift's mom, who was like, hey, my daughter Taylor has like no friends around the same age who are also in the music industry. Do you want to like hang out with her? And that is how Hayley Williams and Taylor Swift became friends and future collaborators, and they're still very good friends to this day. I actually saw Paramore open for the first Eras Tour show I went to, which was amazing. I had never seen them live before. It was like a dream come true in so many different ways. And this is also a new chapter in Hayley's life because on February 4th, 2008, she had a level 3 loosing of the bond from Spirit, which, if you know anything about zodiacal releasing, is just like a big change in how her life was going. And I don't know if this is, being nominated for Best Artist at the Grammys or becoming friends with Taylor Swift or all of the above, but it was just a big turning point in her life. Also, in doing the research for this episode, I was looking through all the awards that Hayley has been nominated for and won, and so many of them are for like sexiest female of the year or hottest female, and it's like being a woman is literally hell. Like she was 20, younger than 20 at this time, and she's such an incredible musician, and she's been signed since she was 14 and making amazing, like really deeply emotional music, and all they cared about was hot girl, sexy lady. And it's like, men are so frustrating. Like patriarchy is so horrible. How did we not rebel against this for so long? In 2009, Paramore released their third album, Brand New Eyes, and then in 2010, Hayley collaborated with B.O.B. on the famous song Airplanes. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? I could really use a wish right now, which peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. In December 2010, Josh and Zach Farro released a message about them leaving the band. They claimed that Hayley was the only person who was actually signed to Atlantic, and the rest of them were just riding on the coattails of her success. They said that Hayley was being manipulated by her management. They said that Paramore was just some manufactured band produced by a label. And then the rest of the band did an interview where they confirmed a lot of these statements, but they were like, these are things that we've talked about as a band. Like they're kind of irrelevant to this moment in particular. But then Josh and Zach went off to do their own project, and then Zach would later end up coming back to join Paramore as the drummer. They released their fourth album, Paramore, a self-titled album, on April 5th, 2013, which was their first album without founding members Josh and Zach Farro. This album featured the songs Still Into You and Ain't It Fun, and Ain't It Fun went on to win Best Rock Song at the 2015 Grammys. In Christmas 2014, Hayley and Chad get engaged. Chad is obviously no longer married at this time. Once again, coinciding with a new level 4 peak period from the lot of Eros that began the day before on December 24th, 2014, because astrology knows everything about you. And then Hayley was talking in an interview about how like the day after she got engaged, she started getting these welts on her wrist, and she was just going through a really hard time, like a lot of depression and just like being in the wrong relationship and having been like, oh, I should probably leave this relationship, but just not doing it. And so in mid 2015, about 6 months later, she takes a hiatus from Paramore. They don't say how long the hiatus was, but for a lot of 2015, she was on a hiatus from making music with Paramore. And then in December 2015, Jeremy Davis leaves the band for the final time. He had also left again and come back again in these intervening years around Brand New Eyes time. And then he starts this legal battle where he's trying to maintain a business relationship as the co-owner of the band Paramore. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And then he starts suing for like royalties of songs that he is not credited on. And like, we know that he was falling asleep during rehearsals and he was not pulling his weight. And so it just seems really petty to be doing these things. This actually is reflected in her astrology. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But they did finally settle out of court and then they were done with him. No coming back. Even at the very beginning of them starting the band, you know, he was quite a bit older and they were teenagers. And he was like, I can't believe these people are teenagers. Like, they don't know. Like, he was just like a hired bassist. So he was not fully on board with them for the whole time that they were a band, which is why he left 3 times. And, you know, has now swung the opposite direction as people who leave punk bands often do and seems to be sort of like a right-wing conspiracy nut, which we really do hate to see. In February 2016, Hayley married Chad Gilbert, and on February 23rd, 2016, Hayley has a level 4 loosing of the bond from the lot of Eros. So her relationship with Chad is just bang on date after date, like on par with zodiacal releasing from the lot of Eros, which is so interesting. But also, once again, like astrology is real. In 2017, they released the album After Laughter, featuring songs Hard Times and Rose Colored Boy. And this is the album that Zach Farrow returned to be the drummer on. On July 1st, 2017, Hayley and Chad announced their separation, citing Chad cheating on her as the reason. Nothing good starts in a getaway car, as they say, and she released the song Dead Horse on her first solo album, Petals for Armor, which she released in 2020, about this relationship that has lines like, I got what I deserved, I was the other woman first, others on the line, but I kept trying to make it work, and I beat it like a dead horse, I beat it like a drum, oh, I stayed with you too long. In 2018, she was diagnosed with PTSD, and then in 2020, she released her first solo album, Petals for Armor. In 2021, she started speaking in interviews about how she's been impacted by generational trauma, and I think it's interesting that about the same time her progressed Mercury retrograde enters her 8th house of Capricorn, her 8th house of deep, dark emotions and personal transformation and struggles, and she starts opening up more about generational trauma and depression and PTSD. And all of these quote unquote darker parts of herself. Like, it's really like Mercury was in the 9th house and it was all like, yay, journeys, spirituality, exciting. And then it goes back into the 8th and it's like, and now let's talk about my trauma. It'd be like that. In 2022, she confirmed that she is in a relationship with her bandmate, Taylor York. And then in 2023, she was featured on Castle's Crumbling, a bonus from the Vault track on Taylor Swift's album Speak Now, Taylor's version. Then Paramore released an album called This Is Why with an eponymous title track, This Is Why. And the album won Best Rock Album at the 2024 Grammys, and the title track won Best Alternative Music Performance at the same Grammys. And then just 2 weeks ago, Hayley released about 14 singles on her website that you could download if you had a code from buying a bottle of hair dye from her hair dye label. And then she released them on, not streaming, they're not on Spotify, but she has at least released them on YouTube, which is where I have been listening to them. And they're just phenomenal. Like, I saw a TikTok the other day being like, Hayley Williams has no peers. Like, in the pop punk space for her age, she is so good at songwriting. She's so good at singing. She's so good at music production. She's so stylish. She's so good with like makeup and cool creative self-expression things, and she just is peerless in her age group in that space. And she released these 14 tracks that are just amazing and actually really good commentary on our current socio-political environment. And we have been really like wanting and needing and asking for this. We've been like, guys, like, we need revolution songs. We need something to get us going and like really open people's eyes who haven't been radicalized already. and Miss Hayley Williams delivered. Hayley has been very politically vocal throughout her career. She has been very anti-Trump. She has made anti-Project 2025 speeches. She's a vocal feminist. When there was that whole thing going down about how Misery Business was actually not feminist, she was like, I am a proud feminist, but not a perfect one. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, like, you can be a feminist and still have jealousy issues with other women. And that doesn't make you not a feminist or a bad feminist, just not a perfect one. I think it's pretty clear that she's cooking something up right now, potentially in cahoots with Taylor Swift, who is also very clearly cooking something up right now. Very close to the vest, like in secret, but something is going on. So I'm excited to see how they continue to collaborate and rebel against the current political environment together. Anyway, that is a brief history of Miss Hayley Williams, so let's get on to her astrology. Once again, Hayley Williams was born on December 27th, 1988 at 3:30 p.m. in Meridian, Mississippi, and this is her birth chart. She is a Capricorn Sun, a Virgo Moon, and a Gemini rising, and I was just talking about another Capricorn Sun, Virgo Moon, Zayn Malik from One Direction in my last episode. He's a Pisces rising, so a little bit different. But the number one quality of someone with a Capricorn Sun and a Virgo Moon is that they are so dedicated to their work and they are so productive that it's like almost like physically impossible to understand it. And I think that Hayley's dedication to her craft is so clearly obvious in her songwriting, in her music playing, in her performance styles, and her vocal abilities. She is just so dedicated to her craft and to music. And I'm so inspired by her. Like, she's so amazing. She has quite this 8th house Capricorn stellium, which is something that Louis Tomlinson from One Direction also has, but she has a couple of more planets there. She also has her Mercury and her Saturn in addition to her Capricorn Sun, and then Uranus and Neptune, which are very common millennial placements. So being a Gemini rising, her chart ruler is her 8th house Capricorn Mercury, and these people take a very practical approach, Capricorn, to deep transformative, personal, emotional matters, the 8th house. They are truth seekers. They seek truth, especially with regards to 8th house matters like power and money and emotions. And I think this aligns really well with what I personally believe that she's doing with Taylor Swift, which is exposing the corruption and the patriarchal structures and all of the abuse and harm within the music industry. And I think she's started to do this by releasing songs like Mirtazapine, about how she's had to be on drugs to get through in this brutal music industry. And once again, she won all of these awards as an early singer, as a teenager, for sexiest female and like hottest female musician. And she has been dealing with this stuff. She's in like her mid-30s now. She's 36. And for more than half of her life, she has been dealing with people reducing her to being a hot lady when she's this like incredibly talented, emotional, hardworking, disciplined musician. And I can't even begin to imagine how frustrating that is on such a large scale. And I really do think that they are working towards exposing all of this shit sometime very soon. These people have a very practical and serious side when they communicate. Capricorn is very practical and serious, especially when they communicate about 8th house matters like intimacy and deep emotional experiences, rebirth, death, transformation, and also like financial matters, shared finances, etc. They're very smart and very good at tackling complex issues. And they can talk very intelligently about like financial matters as well as the unknown, but within limits, because Capricorn is so practical. They have a hard time talking about things that aren't tangible. And a lot of things with the occult, with 8th house matters, are just like purely intangible concepts. They can have a harder time talking about those, but they do have a pretty good grasp on like seriously discussing issues of like life and death and intimacy. If you're not Hayley Williams and you have this placement, it's a great placement for careers where you uncover hidden secrets, like being a detective or a psychologist. She also has her sun in her 8th house of Capricorn, which is someone who is incredibly ambitious and driven to succeed, Capricorn, but also deeply interested in profound experience. And your sun is like your life compass. Your life journey is all about these deep emotions of the 8th house and this transformation. And like, If you have an 8th house sun, your life, I mean, all of our lives are about discovering who we really are, but like their life is about discovering who they really are, going on all of these really deep, really transformative, really challenging experiences of change, of death and transformation and rebirth over and over again. It is not a placement for the weak. These people can struggle with being too possessive or using their Capricornian ambitions for the wrong reasons, like jealousy. And they take a really serious attitude towards these life changes that their life journey is all about. They need to learn how to let go of their old beliefs and their material attachments, which will lead them to a rebirth where they will come back stronger. And these people are just really naturally very good at managing money. They have a very great mix of ambition and strategy that helps them manage complex money matters well. And they work really hard to build wealth and control resources. Hayley's sun is conjunct her 8th house Capricorn Saturn. And Saturn in Capricorn is in domicile. Saturn does really well here, but Saturn doesn't do as well in the 8th house. The 8th house is a very karmic house. Saturn is a very karmic placement. There's a lot of karma going on here, but Saturn is sort of like machine-like. It's very disciplined. And the 8th house, being a water house, is so like murky and like doesn't flow in standard ways that Saturn here is sort of like, I don't really know what to do. And also 8th house planets aren't super visible on a day-to-day basis. The 8th house is a hidden house. The ascendant can't see it. These aren't things that you can easily access. So 8th house placements really come up when you go through like a crisis situation. And Saturn is like the day-to-day discipline and boundaries and structures of your life. So if Saturn can only be accessed when you're in a crisis, he's like, what is going on? Like, why is everyone freaking out? I like discipline. So it's just not the easiest placement to have by any means. And whatever house Saturn is in can indicate where you have like fears and challenges. And the 8th house is the house that represents sexual intimacy and deep relationships. And so these people can struggle with having vulnerability and intimacy with their partners. They might find that they have a hard time in general, like entering or staying in a committed relationship or marriage. Not that I think that people have to be in a committed relationship or marriage to have a happy life, but they can feel like they always end up in relationships where their partner just doesn't really understand them, which can be really painful and wounding for people. And they can find themselves in relationships where the other party uses financial means as revenge after a divorce or a separation. And this really reminded me about what happened with Jeremy Davis. They weren't in a romantic relationship. This wasn't a marriage, but it was a dissolution of a legal partnership, which is an 8th house matter. And he tried to use financial means as revenge after they removed him from the band. Because the 8th house is a money house and Saturn is here, this can indicate monetary loss, especially through other people, or a delayed inheritance. And the last thing about Saturn is that it shows you where you have work to do. And so Saturn in your 8th house indicates that you have a lot of work to do around experiencing deep emotions, processing deep emotions, and specifically around healing from trauma. As with Saturn, this gets better with age. And when you are willing and able and you do the work in this area, Saturn does reward you. And having the Sun conjunct Saturn is very reflective of Hayley's early experiences. The Sun often represents the father, and Saturn represents things that you did not get or things that you struggled with. And so a Sun conjunction with Saturn usually indicates that someone's father figure was neglectful, wasn't very present, emotionally overlooked them at a time when parental attention and care is super important for a child in developing a strong ego and a strong sense of self. So Hayley never got this opportunity to fully develop a strong sense of self, and so that has become a journey and a purpose throughout her lifetime. Also, when you have a neglectful father figure, your mother has to step in as more of a disciplinarian and can often project what she wants you to be onto you. You become less of your own person and more of a parental satellite who is just someone in their orbit who does what they want you to do. And you can follow dreams that your parent projected onto you instead of the things that your soul actually wants to be doing. So again, same signification, you need to spend your life figuring out what is authentic to you, who your authentic self truly is, what that person wants, and then achieving these goals and choosing and carving a path for yourself that is authentic to you and not done in service of a parent or any other person who wanted you to be something because of their desires and not because of who you truly were. And then the Sun-Saturn connection makes a sextile to her north node in her 10th house of Pisces. But with any nodal aspect, you have to remember that the south node is exactly across the wheel from the north node. The north node is your destiny, what you're supposed to move toward. The south node is a point of releasing, the things that come really natural to you, your comfort zone, but things that you are supposed to move away from. So having the Sun conjunct Saturn making a sextile to your north node is great. It's a supportive aspect that helps you move towards your destiny, but it also means that your Sun and your Saturn are conjunct, making an easier and more supportive aspect, a trine to your south node. So you have some blessings that take some work, but you also have a really easy straight shot to the point of releasing. So you do have to work to get yourself to the point where you're supposed to go and not slide back down the mountain to the place where you don't want to go, to the place where you feel really comfortable and you can just hang out and chill, but it's not where you're meant to be. It's not going to fulfill your destiny. So with the Sun sextiling the north node, it means that your ego and your will and your drive and like your conscious sense of self can be in alignment with your soul's destiny and purpose. For Hayley Williams, that's her 10th house Pisces, 10th house of like career and reputation, and Pisces of like emotions and art and like bringing the transcendent universe down into the physical reality and helping people explore the unknown and beauty and their emotions through the art that she puts out and what she's known for. So her Capricorn ambition can be used to climb up this hill and help her do that, but it can also so easily slide her back towards her 4th house, Virgo, where she has her moon, which is all about her family experience and the family and the roots that she came from. She needs to consciously work to move towards the future and not slide back towards the past. However, the Sun, as I mentioned, is very strongly tied to the father, so she does need to work through her childhood wounds around her father and her stepfather in order to achieve her destiny. As we know, none of this is linear. You can slide back and then move forward and then slide back and then move forward. That is life. You have a whole lifetime to accomplish your soul's journey. It's not going to be an easy process, and it's not going to happen all in a straight line. And then having Saturn in sextile to her north node means that she is going to learn her lessons throughout this lifetime at a slow and steady Saturnian pace. Saturn is all about time, and the one promise that we have in this life, if we're lucky, is that time will pass and we will age. So Saturn is not about racing to the finish line. It's about let's take things one step at a time. The process with Saturn is much more important than the end result. Because Saturn makes a trine to her south node, which is an easier aspect, this means that Hayley has a tendency to carry around burdens that don't belong to her, other people's problems that she has taken on as her own responsibility for one reason or the other, and feels like she has to resolve. She needs to learn in this lifetime to let go of burdens that don't belong to her. Anything that's not her sole responsibility, she needs to let go. And then she needs to learn how to identify when a burden is hers or not, and refuse to take on any burdens that don't actually belong to her. At the same time, she needs to learn to take responsibility for herself and all of her stuff. She is responsible for that, and she will receive great blessings in this lifetime if she just has a really good relationship with her own responsibility and understands that being responsible for her own stuff means that she can't take on other people's stuff too, because they have to be responsible for that. She needs to learn to release codependency but still treat others with respect, and she needs to learn to stick up for herself without playing other people's games. And this feeling of saying no to other people's burdens and really taking radical responsibility for herself is going to be a concept that feels foreign to her, but it will bring her amazing blessings and help her achieve her soul's purpose. This Sun-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn also directly opposes her 2nd house Cancer Chiron. Chiron in Cancer in the second house has a lot to do with emotional healing through financial security. With Chiron in the second house, it talks about money value, but it also talks about personal value. These people struggle with their own sense of self-worth and their own value as a human being. And to compensate for this, they have a tendency to accumulate and cling onto material possessions to give them a sense of like security. And in a very individualistic world, it's sort of like the more things I physically have and I can hold on to, the bigger I am in this space. And the more secure I am, and the more people have to look at me and care about me. This is a big problem that we have with billionaires. And once they face their deep wound, their Chiron wound, they will have this realization about the way that they cling to their material possessions to avoid having to deal with their deep emotional wound and to act as like a band-aid on this wound. They're like, I can fix my emotional problem by buying things, but it's not a fix, it's a band-aid. And this feels incredibly related to me, to having a mom who was trapped in an abusive relationship and couldn't leave because she didn't have the financial means to, but then once she finally got the opportunity, fled with Hayley. It's sort of like, I need also to have financial means so that I can run away if I need to. The only way I'll be secure is if I have enough money to do so. And she has to understand that if she solves her emotional wound and those problems, she can build her self-worth in ways that aren't financial. And once she has really strong self-worth, she can avoid entering a situation that's really dangerous like that. And having the sun opposing your Chiron indicates the sort of sense that like other people are the people who get care and pity, but not you. You are not the person with the wound. You are hands-free. These people put themselves in roles of healers and mentors, but never really let that healing come back the other way until they meet someone and enter a relationship, romantic, platonic, business, whatever, with someone who has a planet in their own birth chart that activates their Chiron. Then with this person, they form a really deep emotional bond and they finally start letting that healing into their own life. This is why synastry is so important. Every person who comes into your life, whether they are a good influence or a bad influence, has a different impact on you because their birth chart interacts with yours in different ways. They have different planetary combinations that hit yours by aspect or conjunction in different ways and light up different parts of your chart. If you want to know how someone is going to impact your life, synastry is a great way to do that. And as a little plug, I am a professional astrologer. If you would like to book a synastry or just a general birth chart reading with me, you can do so at popstrologypod.com/readings or directly on my booking page at calendly.com/popstrology. But once they meet this person and develop a relationship with them, it opens space for them to address their wound, acknowledge their wound, acknowledge the sensitivity they have around this wound and the ways that it can make them like pretty awkward and the patterns that they have created to avoid acknowledging or touching this wound or any of the related experiences or feelings. And once you've created space for that, you can start to heal it. And then Saturn opposed Chiron is also pretty common in like millennials of that age specifically. Millennials mostly have Saturn in Capricorn or Aquarius, and Chiron moves at different speeds through different signs, but it was in Cancer for a long time when Saturn was in Capricorn. It was in Leo for a long time when Saturn was in Aquarius. I was born September 8th, 1993, and my Chiron is at 0 degrees Virgo. So anytime before that, there is probably some sort of Chiron-Saturn opposition. So it's actually a very common placement that I see when I do birth chart readings. And it indicates to me that these people tend to shoulder the responsibilities of their family. Like they tend to think that their family's trauma is their job to resolve. It can even feel to these people like family only means pain. Like they can't imagine joy or acceptance or love or pleasure as a part of a familial relationship. It feels to them like family equals pain. And they are the only people who can resolve that for their family. It can even feel to them like they are constantly being put in charge of things that aren't in their control, but paradoxically, they put themselves in these situations because they have like a pathological need to feel needed. So they are always trying to help other people whose situations they can't control. But then they're like, how am I supposed to solve this problem when I don't have control of any of the variables? And it's like, No one asked you to. Like, you are putting this on yourself. This is so Capricorn. Like, you are taking this on as yourself because you feel like you really need to do this, because if you're not helping, then people might forget about you or stop needing you entirely. And with Saturn Chiron aspects and just in general, it's so important to remember that healing from trauma is not just taking away the pain of the wound, but it's also creating a new future without that trauma. It's imagining joy. It's imagining happiness. It's imagining a beautiful new life for yourself. Because if you just take away the thing that's causing the pain, what do? Like, you might not have the pain anymore, but unless you like fundamentally change what you do on a day-to-day basis, your life isn't going to change. I actually just made a TikTok video this morning about how I think it's so important to remove yourself from the systems where you incurred the wound in order to heal that trauma. I didn't even realize this until I got laid off in March and then decided not to get another job and to start my own astrology business instead. But I was never going to be able to fully heal my trauma while I was still working a corporate job, because I took that job because of my dad and the trauma that he inflicted on me. He taught me as a narcissist to constantly try to seek his validation, and getting a corporate job that does not align at all with my artist soul, my astrologer soul, my autism, my ADHD was completely out of alignment with who I authentically am and what I want. But I did it because I wanted to appease my dad, because my dad has always taught me that my number one job is to appease him. If I stayed in the corporate field and just kept getting different jobs, trying to find something that felt like I loved it, I was never going to be happy, and I was never going to actually heal from my trauma. Obviously, this is coming from a really privileged perspective. I have savings. I've been able to live in my apartment without having a salary. I am able to move home with my parents and live rent free. We live in capitalism. It sucks. I hate that we need to have a paycheck to survive. It really shouldn't be that way. So operating within your own reality and the realities of your situation, of course, but as much as you can remove yourself from the system where the wound happened, you're going to be much better able to heal from that trauma. You need to be able to carve your own path. And this is the imagining joy part. Like, you need to understand who you are authentically, remove from all of the systems of patriarchy and capitalism and compulsory heterosexuality and racism and ableism and classism, etc., that we have thrust upon us from the time that we are 0 years old, and forge your own path. And once you can imagine what your own path through this life looks like, without considering anything societal, without considering the fact that we were told that we need to find someone to marry and get married and have babies since we are 0 days old, without considering that we are supposed to have a stable job and career that looks a certain way and follows a certain progression. Once you remove yourself from all of that and you're just like, hey, I'm on this earth for about 90 or so years. How do I want to spend that time? What do I want my life to look like? It doesn't have to look like anything. It doesn't have to look like anything that's been established. You are the pioneer who charts your own path, and no one will do that for you but you. People will want to do that for you, but you have to remember that you live for you and no one else. And once you can imagine that and chart your own path that's so true to who you authentically are, then you can really actually heal that trauma. But I've had an epiphany over my past year of trauma healing that you can't fully heal the wound unless you remove yourself from these like artificial structures that are placed on us and let yourself choose your own path. This is similar to why I think that you cannot heal any sort of relational trauma wound while you're actively dating. I think that for me, if I had thrown myself back into the dating world at any point during my trauma healing journey, it just would have been this like fight of opposites. Like, I'm trying to unlearn all of the trauma patterns that I'm attracted to in relationships while actually trying to be in a relationship that just doesn't compute in my mind. I'm not saying that you have to get divorced to heal your trauma or whatever, but like maybe you do. Anyway, that is Saturn opposite Chiron. Hayley also has her Uranus and Neptune in her 8th house of Capricorn. And eighth house Uranus is a very chaotic and unexpected changes planet in a house that's all about changes. So these people can go through transformations that are like exceptionally unexpected at exceptionally unexpected times. Like it's a lot of chaos. And then Neptune here also blurs boundaries and obscures. It means that these people, especially in intimate relationships, don't even want there to be like a separation between them and their partner. They want to fully merge with their partner's soul. So this plus Saturn plus her sun, like it's just so much energy going on. It must be crazy living inside Hayley Williams' mind. I'm so glad that she has a creative outlet to get out all of her feelings. So if you haven't listened to her solo album, Petals for Armor, or the new songs that she released and really like dug into them and looked at the lyrics, I highly recommend it because she has a lot to say. And I think she puts fairly universal, or at least universal for traumatized women, experiences into words that make a lot of sense to me, very similar to what Taylor Swift does. Hayley has one critical degree planet, and it's her moon that is at 0 degrees of her 4th house Virgo. Since it's at 0 degrees, it is like the purest, most unadulterated version of a Virgo moon, unjaded, just at the beginning, pens in her hand, ending unplanned, like raring to go. But a Virgo moon is not the easiest placement in general because Virgo is such a self-critical and critical of others placement. And your moon is the deepest part of yourself. It's your soul, it's your home, it's where you come from. And the moon is really like who you are innately without even having to try. Your sun is really what you strive for. Your rising is how you come across. And so at her very deepest core, she is a Virgo. She is a perfectionist. She is critical of herself and of others. And that can be really tough. Because her moon is at 0 degrees, she's very easily able to access this information and these emotions. And that's part of Hayley Williams' magic, is that she is able to access her emotions and turn them into art and music that is very compelling and moving. And with a Virgo moon in the 4th house, this is a lot directed towards like her home life. Like she likes her home, her family home, and her current home to be very neat and tidy and organized. And that helps her maintain emotional balance and not go crazy. She loves routine. She loves balance. She needs all of these things, cleanliness, etc., to feel stable in her life. And to her and to these people, when there is a focus on organization, it keeps a sense of like peace and harmony in the house. But of course, perfectionism is the worst. Virgo sun here, perfectionism is horrible. It can prevent you from doing anything. You can get stuck on step 1 of everything you try to do forever. These people worry about small mistakes. They're constantly worrying that they're not good enough. They can be unhappy with their emotional lives. They focus so much on flaws that they miss the beauty in their relationships and their achievements. And this constant striving to have the perfect balance of home and work life and the perfect organization systems and the perfect routines and the perfect everything causes them to not live in the present. So they miss the beauty and the happiness of like everyday life because they're always thinking about the future, or they're in their heads being really anxious about things. And you really need to learn how to be present in your body and experience the joy and happiness of life on a day-to-day basis, because that is life. Like you are living your life right now. It doesn't start tomorrow. It doesn't start next week. It doesn't start next year. It doesn't start when you finally get a job that you like. It doesn't start when you finally find a partner. This is your life right now, today. Have some fun, get in your body, move, shake, dance, sing, whatever it takes to make you be present, because this could be your last day on earth. You better enjoy it, sister. And she has her moon in an off sign conjunction with her IC, her Imam Kohli, the root of your chart, which is at 28 degrees of Leo, her 3rd house. And an IC in Leo indicates that someone didn't get enough one-on-one attention or care as a child. They were usually overshadowed by another person, a sibling or a parent in their family, who took up all of the attention and all of the spotlight and took it away from this young person, Hayley Williams, who really needed it. And these people were often usually taught that emotional outbursts or quote unquote excessive displays of emotion were bad, and they were sometimes even punished for this. So they either learned to like become like really expressive and like really scream when they didn't get their needs met. Or more likely, they learn to be incredibly self-sufficient, to never need to ask for help, to never need to ask for attention. So as adults, they still have this inner child inside them who just wants to be heard, who just wants to express themselves and their emotions. But a lot of the time, they've repressed this part of themselves so deeply into their unconscious that they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to ask for attention. So a lot of the time they need to heal, they need to acknowledge and access and heal this wound from childhood to be able to confidently express themselves and their emotions. And they can also find themselves like desperately or compulsively desiring the spotlight or desiring other people's attentions to try to fulfill this wound of the attention that they didn't give it enough of as a child. And Hayley's moon conjunct this IC, even though it's off sign, is a strong indicator that this emotional wound and this hardship is a huge part of who she is. And once again, similar to her Chiron wound, this is a wound that she really has to heal in order to move forward. But it's also a really important part of the art that she makes and of her career. And then the last placement of Hayley's that I'll cover is that she has this 7th house Sagittarius Venus conjunct her descendant. And Sagittarius Venus I've covered before with Janelle Monáe and I think Angela Davis, but I'm not quite sure. But Sagittarius Venus is someone who loves spontaneity and adventure in relationships. They have a very hard time committing to one person for their whole life. They just really need excitement and adventure in their relationships. And if they can get that from one person, then amazing. But it can be hard. But Venus conjunct your descendant, which is how you interact with other people. The 7th house is the quote unquote marriage house, but I think that's patriarchal. It's the house of interpersonal relationships. So Hayley has a gift with her Venus on her DC of making other people feel really seen and liked and appreciated, which goes really far in making her a charismatic and popular person who attracts friends really easily. It makes her have a non-competitive, unthreatening vibe. People don't usually see her and be like, she's going to steal my man. Once again, patriarchal bullshit. It's a strong focus on having one-on-one interpersonal relationships with other people. But there can also be a difficulty with Venus accepting the tougher parts of a relationship. There can be a desire to have relationships all be very Venusian and lovely and beautiful and peaceful and harmonious. But that's not the reality of a long-term, specifically relationship. You're going to go through hard times together and things will not always be rainbows and sunshine and butterflies, even as much as a Venus DC would want it to be. That's what I have to say about Hayley Williams' birth chart. I have a few dates predictions for you, and then we will head out. So September 14th, 2025, Hayley is going to enter a new level 2 peak period from the lot of spirit. This is going to be a really big, not necessarily a change, but a period of heightened action for her coming this September. And on September 23rd, 2025, she's going to have a level 4 loosing of the bond from spirit. So this might actually be a change. The beginning of September, we might start seeing more stuff from her. And then towards the end of September, she announces some sort of pivot or starts doing something new. I think we're going to see activity from her this fall. And then on February 4th, 2026, the beginning of next year, she's going to go into a new level 3 peak period. So another period of heightened activity, but not as strong as in September of this year. We're going to have this happen again on July 30th of next year. On October 31st next year, Halloween 2026, her progressed Venus is going to enter Aquarius. So it'll be a new chapter in her love life, romantic life, etc. And then on February 24th, 2027, she's going to have a level 3 peak period and loosing of the bond. So this will probably be a major transition in her career or the way she works. I don't know quite what it'll be. I could just see themes, but I am excited to see what comes next from Hayley. I think she's just one of the best artists of our generation. She's so talented. She's so disciplined. She's so unafraid to speak her mind. And I think that is so important in an artist, especially in the current cultural and socio-political environment. It sort of is like Hayley save us. So I really do recommend that everyone goes to her YouTube and listens to her new songs and really digs into the lyrics, which is what I'm going to do after I finish editing this podcast because I love them so much. It is amazing stuff. And Hayley, if you ever happen to see this, I love you. I would love to be your personal astrologer. Call me. Anyway, my name is Jessie James. I'm a professional astrologer. I do birth chart readings for other people for a living. So if you're interested in getting a birth chart reading done, a synastry reading to see how a new romantic or business or platonic partner is going to impact your birth chart and what you can expect out of that relationship, a solar return or lunar return reading to tell you how your upcoming year or month is going to go, I am the girl for you. You can book a reading with me at popstrologypod.com/readings or at my booking page, calendly.com/popstrology. There's lots of links in the description box for how you can contact me. And you can also follow me on social media. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at popstrologypod. And my personal Instagram is at astrojessie_. Anyway, I love you so much and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.